All right, good morning, good morning. Let me welcome you to your favorite current affairs program on Saturdays. Saturday mornings, your Metro TV. Let me welcome you to Inside Pages. My name is Audumoro. Inside Pages essentially digs deeper into the pages of the most current and the most topical issue for the week, makes headline for the weeks. We bring the relevant guests and we ask them the relevant questions. So that's what we do right here on Inside Pages. My name, once again, is Audu Moro. Now, what are we talking about this morning? I'm sure your guess is as good as mine. After a heated debate back and forth between the majority and minority in Parliament, in fact, since last year, the minority has been asking for the Finance Minister to appear before the House and account for how monies that we received during the COVID period and how these monies have been expended or how they've been spent. The Finance Minister has been, given some reasons or excuses why he wasn't able to come to Parliament. But finally he did, and we saw what happened. We'll bring you some excerpts of what the Finance Minister said, some reactions that came after the Finance Minister's presentation, and what Ghanaians are saying. And then also our second topic for this morning has to do with the back and forth between the Attorney General and the Member of Parliament that's Godfrey Dame, and the Member of Parliament for North Tongue, that's Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa. Now, the Attorney General is actually threatening to institute legal action against the Honourable Member of Parliament. And the Honourable Member of Parliament has actually scoffed off that threat. He says, look, I can't be bothered. And it has to do with the role the current Attorney General, who was then the Deputy Attorney General, played at the very early stages of the setting up of the Cathedral Secretariat. Now, I'll bring you all that you need to know about that particular issue as well, because the Attorney General is being accused of engaging in a conflict of interest situation. Is that really the case? When I come back, we'll look at all of that. I'll introduce my guest. We'll do reporter's block, etc., and so on and so forth. My name, once again, is Aldo Moro. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be right back. As I did indicate at the beginning of the show, which is Inside Pages, that this morning, our main focus is going to be to assess the performance of the Finance Minister when he appeared before the August House of Parliament to account for monies that were given to Ghana in 2020, 2021, and possibly in 2022, and how those monies have been expended. I did indicate that the minority, and this is on the back of the calls by the minority in Parliament, that they suspect something untoward has happened with the monies that were given to to the government of Ghana, and again, they suspect that something untoward has happened, and so the Finance Minister should come to Parliament. I remember that even before the Finance Minister came to Parliament, there was a debate as to whether indeed the Finance Minister was the right person to come and account for COVID expenditure, or the Auditor General. We should wait for the Auditor General to do his work so that we get to know exactly which amount of money was spent on what. There were also suggestions by the minority that an ad hoc committee should be formed to look into how the COVID monies were expended. At the end of the day, the Speaker of Parliament directed that both the Health and the Finance Committee should come together and work and look into or probe a bit further what the Finance Minister has said. And so that is where we are. Now, we're going to start the show by, let me first of all introduce my resource persons. And then after introducing my resource persons, we're going to be playing you excerpts of what happened in Parliament. So we'll hear from the Finance Minister, we'll hear from the majority, and then we'll hear from the minority, because I've also held a news conference after everything that has happened. So that's how we're going to be. We have planned the show for today. Also remember that we would also be speaking to the North Tongue Member of Parliament. Now, the Attorney General has serious issues with him. The Attorney General says that the North Tongue Parliament wants to paint him black. He wants to make him look like a bad man because he, the Attorney General, the issues about the role he played during the setting up of the National Cathedral Secretariat is something that the Member of Parliament does not understand how everything happened and its workings. Now, this comes on the back of the accusation by the Member of Parliament that he, Godfrey Dame, has been engaged in a conflict of interest situation. We'll also be looking at that as well. And also intermittently, we'll be going to Teshi, that's the family house of the just chairman of the Adjustment Group of Companies. His dad passed on last week. The 1-week observation is being held. We'll bring you live updates of that as well intermittently. So let me welcome my guest for this morning. Murtala Mohammed is the Member of Parliament for Tamale Central. He's loved by his people, and I know exactly what I'm talking about. Murtala Mohammed, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
And it's been a while.
Yes, it has.
You've been very busy in the last few weeks.
The last few months, actually.
Oh, the last few months.
I think the last time I came here is over almost 2 months or more.
Right.
I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Oh,
and
okay.
we were going around the regions,
Right.
having the public hearing for the 2028, 2018 Auditor General's report.
Right.
And
Right.
after that, I had to go to the constituencies to do
Very
some few
important.
work. Yes.
Extremely important. Let me also welcome Pa Agribuachi Dankwa. He's government spokesperson on governance and security. He's also with us. A very loyal, resource persons to here, not just Metro TV, but to our sister stations, Original FM as well, Original TV. Good to see you, boss.
Good to be here,
I
Moro.
hope you're
very
doing
good
well.
morning to you. I'm very well, thank you.
Okay.
It's good
All
to
right.
be here.
Now, let's do this. So we're now going to start with Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister, what he told Parliament. The majority would be responding, the minority will also respond. So let's watch this.
Speaker, honorable members, thank you very much indeed, and it's for the opportunity to be here today. It's always a pleasure to be in the House, and I truly appreciate this chance to deliver the statement, and I just want to assure the House, indeed all parliamentarians, of the onerous responsibilities you have in the discharge of your oversight functions. And in that regard, I'm obligated, like all ministers, to respond to the House when one is called. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic statement, the weaknesses in critical structures and systems in education, health, economic life, and communities. The pandemic triggered a sharp and heavy disruption in global supply chains as lockdowns and restrictions led to reductions in demand and production levels. Mr. Speaker, this has required us to undertake major fiscal measures beyond what we programmed prior to the pandemic to finance the additional expenditure such as support to households, engagement of additional health personnel, deployment of security personnel at our borders to enforce the COVID-19 protocols, as well as the procurement of personal protective equipment. Government has had to adopt major fiscal measures to accommodate the increased expenditures and the shortfalls in revenue. Though our response was bold, decisive, and compassionate, it has also been costly. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that on 30th March 2020, I made a statement to Parliament on the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economy of Ghana, following which the implementation of the Coronavirus Alleviation Program commenced. Furthermore, during the presentation of the 2020 mid-year fiscal policy, I indicated that a supplementary request included a program funding of 19.3 billion from various funding sources to support the budget both directly and indirectly. On the expenditure side, an amount of 11.16 billion was programmed for COVID-19 related expenses, detailed attached as Appendix 1. The difference of 8.14 billion was programmed to provide for shortfalls in revenue. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the budget programmed the total amount of 4.6 billion for COVID-19 related expenses, detailed attached as Appendix 2. It is worth noting that the Ministry of Finance mobilized the needed financial resources whilst the various COVID-19 interventions and related expenses were implemented by the relevant sector ministries and agencies. Mr. Speaker, to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on businesses and households, ensure that economic activities recover and minimize job losses, government mobilized 18.19 billion out of the program 19.3 billion in 2020 from various funding sources as shown in Table 1 to support the budget. GOG Contingency Fund of 1.2 billion, World Bank Group Funds of 1.3 billion, IMF 1 billion program, AFDB 405 million, EU 504 million, BOG bonds 10 billion, summing up to 19.3 billion. Mr. Speaker, government program funding of 1,203,715,085 cedis to finance the coronavirus alleviation program. This program focused on achieving 5 key objectives: limit and stop the importation of the virus, contain its spread, provide adequate care for the sick, limit the impact of the virus on social and economic life, and inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepen our self-reliance. The Ministry of Health also led the preparation and implementation of the Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan, which was financed with funds from the World Bank. An amount of $230 million was secured from various facilities under the World Bank to support the implementation of COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan. The funding facilities included the fast-track COVID-19 facility, $35 million. This financing is Ghana's share of the World Bank's $4 billion fast-track COVID-19 facility that was announced in March 2020 to enable countries deal with the pandemic. GARID SEC $65 million. This amount was drawn from the existing World Bank-funded Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project by activating the contingency response component of the project. An additional financing of $130 million in November 2020 to strengthen and scale up the gains of the EPRP. Mr. Speaker, an additional financing of $200 million was also secured in 2021, largely for the acquisition and deployment of COVID-19 vaccines to support other sources of financing of the vaccination program under this plan. The plan sought to achieve the following: strengthen coordination of the overall preparedness activities. Strengthen capacity of regions, priority health facilities and points of entry to prevent, rapidly detect, investigate, and control any COVID-19 outbreak in Ghana. Strengthen national capacity for laboratory surveillance and diagnostics. Build capacity for early diagnosis, case management, contact tracing, and infection prevention and control. Ensure minimum health logistics are in place in prioritized regions, health facilities, and points of entry for preparedness and laboratory capacity sustained for timely and quality testing of COVID-19 samples. And increase public awareness on COVID-19 risk mitigation and response measures. Budget support. Mr. Speaker, in addition to all the above sources of funds, other funds were sourced to support the budget. These include the $1 billion from the International Monetary Fund, 10 billion Ghana cedis from the Bank of Ghana, $69.3 million from the Africa Development Bank, and $99.7 million from the European Union. By the grace of the Almighty God, through our well-designed plans and the internal and external funds we mobilize, government provided support to the frontline health workers, protected livelihoods and job losses, demonstrated care to the vulnerable in society, and supported small businesses. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that the status of utilization of the funds to finance the COVID-19 measures excludes funds of the National COVID-19 Trust Fund and the Ghana Private Sector COVID-19 Fund. Mr. Speaker, for the year 2020 and 2021, the program expenditure amounted to $15.763 million for the COVID-19 related expenditure, out of which the actual utilization was $12.036 million. In 2020, a total amount of $11.162 million, this includes a cap, was programmed for COVID-19 related expenditure. Out of this amount, a total of $8.12 billion was utilized. The amount was utilized to provide support to households, supply equipment, and provide relief to health workers. health infrastructure, security operations, evacuations, quarantine and coordination, economic relief, stabilization and revitalization, and COVID-19 complementary releases. Mr. Speaker, a total amount of $4.6 billion was programmed in the 2021 budget for COVID-19 related expenses. At the end of 2021, total utilization was $3.9 billion, representing 85% utilization. Expenditure on COVID-19 falls within the following broad categories: supports to household, health responses, health infrastructure, security operations, economic relief, COVID-19 vaccines, other COVID-related expenditure, all summing up to the $12.03 billion. Mr. Speaker, at this juncture, I wish to dispel the notion that there have been inconsistencies in government data on COVID-19. His Excellency the President intimated during the State of the Nation address on 30th March 2022 that we had mobilized about $17.7 billion since 2020 to fight the pandemic. We subsequently reconciled the data, and I can report that as of end May 2022, we've mobilized $18.19 billion to mitigate the effect of the pandemic. Again, when His Excellency the Vice President indicated on 7th April 2022 at the National TESCON Conference that government has spent $8.1 billion on COVID-19, it was within the context of expenditures for 2020, as I've already indicated.
Well, so you had the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, presenting to Parliament how, in his view, the government's the monies that government has received and how it has spent. I'm talking about the COVID-related expenditure. I don't know what opinion you have. I don't know what views you have about how the finance minister went about it. But definitely and certainly, the minority does have a view. They have serious contentions with what the finance minister has done. Now, let's listen to the Honorable Isaac Adongo, who is a member of Parliament for Bolgasanga Central. We will also hear from Ato Forsing, the Honorable Ato Forsing, and some other minority MPs who have some serious issues about what the finance minister came to present. Let's watch them.
We cannot sit here and say that the Minister of Finance should be the only one accounting for the COVID amount. The Speaker, the Minister responsible for Finance is only a conduit of releasing the money. But the monies were spent at the various MDAs. The monies were spent at various MDAs. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I call on you, Mr. Speaker, to set up an ad hoc committee so that we can bring the various heads of the MDAs, in particular, that spent the money, to account for this in detail.
An amount of $1,119.73 million was allocated for March school reopening in January 2021. Yet the President says in his State of the Nation 1.9 billion, and you are giving us 1.1 billion. Another unexplained discrepancy. So, Mr. Speaker, for us, a probe and an open public inquiry into COVID expenditure beyond the headline numbers of the Minister of Finance is inevitable and an imperative. We are not looking for headline figures. I spent 12 billion. 12 billion on what? On what? We need the expenditure returns and expenditure details of every amount. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Ato Forsing also raises the fundamental issue of accountability of the COVID Trust Fund, which is established by an act of Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, the reason we are asking for accountability, we know that beyond public-spirited individuals who were determined to support the President to save lives, we are not questioning that he needed to save lives, but save lives in the arena of probity and accountability. In that COVID Trust Fund, Mr. Speaker, we are told that the National Health Insurance Authority contributed $250,000, Ghana Stock Exchange 100,000, GMPC 1 million, Ghana Gas 1 million, Senate 500,000. These are all public funds that must be accounted for to the Parliament of Ghana.
From the minister's own document before this house, he is unable to speak to the same numbers a year after. That is very serious. Mr. Speaker, if I take the numbers the minister is reporting for 2021, that he spent 3.9, and I add it to the figure he gave me for 2020, Mr. Speaker, I get total expenditure on COVID of 22.1 billion, the minister's own report. Mr. Speaker, the minister is not reporting to us 10 billion Ghana cedis of our own money.
Why? Why?
In his own report. This is not my report. This is the budget statement of the Minister for Finance,
And then quoting scripture.
which is a public record in this house. And that after almost a year, 6 billion has disappeared, 10 billion has disappeared, and it is now a Koshoko 12 billion.
So that was the Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga Central. That's the Honorable Isaac Adongo. Now, the majority obviously would take none of that. Let's hear what they also have to say about what the minority has said.
Desperate attempt to get power to render the rules odious. These rules are there to guide all of us. We have committees in Parliament. If, Mr. Speaker, in the comments of Honorable Atu-Forson, he contends that, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Atu-Forson contends that he does acknowledge that indeed the Ministry of Finance did not do the specific expenditures. He does contend, and it's factual, and I commend him for that. If that is so, and we agree and believe same to be true, then let us rely on the committees of Parliament. We don't need a special committee. We don't need another committee.
All the 275 members in this chamber are alive. We all benefited one way or the other from the reliefs that have been presented to this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to the extent that our spouses were even privileged to come to the hospital or the clinic to get their jobs. Where were we going to get the monies from, Mr. Speaker? How many of us didn't benefit from the free water supply as captured in this report? How many of us didn't benefit from the free electricity? The lifeline consumers, the Minister of Energy is here. Our constituents. How many of you didn't benefit? Mr. Speaker, we are here for accountability. That is why the Minister on pages 14 and 15 has given us an elaborate expenditure plan, which cannot be criticized by your good self. You haven't been able to punch any meaningful hole in the expenditure as provided for by the Minister.
All right, so very, very feisty, very, very heated debate in Parliament. I mean, predictably so. That's or understandably so. That's what happens in Parliament. It's a house where issues are debated and debated comprehensively. Now, let me start today's conversation with Dr. Eric Odro Osai, who is a governance and public financial management expert. Let's pick his quick thoughts on what he makes of what happened in Parliament and whether he thinks that the way to go is what the Speaker of Parliament has done, which is health and finance come together, work, probe a bit further. Let's know how the monies we got have been expended. Dr. Eric Odro Osai, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Pages. Doc, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I hope you're doing very well, sir.
Yes, I'm fine. And yourself?
I'm doing very well. And if you can speak up, I'll be most grateful because I can hardly hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better. I think we can make do with this. We can make do with this. Yes. Doc, before we even get to some specifics, before the finance minister appeared before the House, there was a big debate, and that debate has to do with whether he's the most appropriate person to come and account for how these COVID-related monies have been expended. There were two schools of thought. There was one that says you don't need the finance minister necessarily to come and tell us how these monies have been expended because the Auditor General's report will be out soon. Some say, indeed, Parliament itself has committees that would look into these matters anyway. So why invite the finance minister to come and account for COVID-related expenditure? It's misplaced. I don't know where you stand on this matter, sir.
Thank you very much. I think in every constitutional democracy, there are institutions of state and safeguard measures that are put in place to ensure that we have good and sound public financial management. Because lack of sound and adequate public financial management will not help in our constitutional democracy. My position is that every expenditure incurred in this country is sanctioned by the finance minister. After the expenditure has been incurred, we have the Auditor General, which is a constitutionally provided institution to audit the transactions after it has occurred. Even before that, the Constitution and the public financial management laws in its own wisdom has provided for an internal audit agency that is supposed to provide an advisory and assurance service to the Ministry of Accounting institutions. So if Parliament, in providing its oversight responsibility, really want a verification or a validation of an expenditure that has been incurred, such as COVID, in my understanding, the Right Honourable Speaker could have invited the Auditor General to conduct a special audit on the COVID expenditure and submit that special report directly to Parliament. Be it as it may, when even the Right Honourable Speaker did not invite the Auditor General to conduct that special audit, but rather requested the Minister for Finance to submit a report to the House on it. As soon as the report was submitted to the House, I would have expected that the Speaker or the members of Parliament will unanimously agree that they refer that particular report to the Auditor General or the Internal Audit Agency to verify and validate the report and submit an independent audit opinion on that report to Parliament. In that case, they will have some level of reliability on that particular Auditor General or the Internal Audit Agency's report. Because in my understanding and professional opinion, Parliament cannot independently verify the figures submitted by the Finance Minister unless they get a professional like the Auditor General or the Internal Audit Agency, whose professional mandate architecture is to do this exercise. In that case, you take away the politics. In that case, you get an expert opinion to rely on. In that case, we would all know that this has been certified and approved or disapproved by a professional auditor provided for under our laws. But the way we are proceeding, once we introduce politics into it, you destroy the beauty of democracy and the beauty of good financial governance.
So it wasn't a good decision for the Speaker then to have asked that's of course in your view and based on what you've just said, it then for me stands to reason that it really doesn't make sense, or you don't think it was advisable for the Speaker to have asked that the Finance and the Health Committee to probe a bit further into what the Finance Minister has said?
Well, I will not say it does not make sense, but it would have been more appropriate and it would have been in the supreme interest of Parliament to have gotten the Auditor General or the Internal Audit Agency to have validated the figures for them first. Then after that, they can proceed well by giving it to the appropriate committees. In that case, the committees would then have been working with validated data, and any conclusion drawn would have been acceptable and would have been seen apolitical in the eyes of the public. But the way we are proceeding, Parliament, in my view, may not be independently possible to validate the data. And I don't understand why you have a professional, a constitutionally mandated institution like an Auditor General. You should have used the Auditor General or the Internal Audit Agency. They are all state institutions who are supposed to provide assurance and advisory services to all public institutions. So they could have validated their figures. So once they bring the validated report to Parliament, then you can debate it and refer it to the appropriate committee to hold the key officers responsible. Because from the way I see the report, it cuts across all sectors of the economy. And you need a professional auditor to validate it. I don't think Parliament has the figures. No, they don't have the PVs. They don't have the bank statement. They don't have the bank account. They don't have anything to verify it. So if somebody says the figure is inaccurate, on what basis? Get an auditor, be it Auditor General or Internal Audit Agency, to validate it for you.
That's quite interesting. I was going to ask whether you were suggesting that the MPs who will be looking to this matter may not necessarily have the technical competence to be able to do this. And of course, there's also the issues about the politicization of it. But some will also ask it's also counterfactual that some of these MPs are also professional auditors as well. I know, for instance, Isaac Adongo is a professional auditor. In fact, throughout his life, that's what he's been doing for a living. But I'm sure you would say, well, he's NDC, so, what can you expect? I'm sure that's where you're coming from.
No, my brother, I think that you can be a professional auditor in Parliament.
Right.
At this point in time, your role is not to audit. Your role is to legislate. And provide oversight.
Okay.
And even if you are a professional auditor, you do not have all the figures. My point is that the payment vouchers they use to pay those transactions are sitting in certain ministries. MPs cannot go there to have access to those documents. The Auditor General can send his staff to go and do the verification. The Internal Audit Agency can send the internal auditors to go for those PVs and validate and write report. It is about segregation of duties, checks and balances, and professionalism.
Okay.
Once you make the legislator an auditor, you are creating problems. Then he becomes a judge in his own cause, which is not the case. More to the point, these technical institutions are to provide technical advice and support to Parliament. So that is all I'm saying. Okay. Parliament should have referred the report to the Auditor General and commissioned the Auditor General to conduct an independent.
I get that. I get that point. But just briefly, if you can do this for us, I think it would not be fair for us not to pick your general thoughts about the performance of the minister when he appeared before the House. If you can do that briefly for us, what for you were the takeaways?
Oh, I think that, you see, if you invite a minister to submit a report on or an account of COVID expenditure, he will submit the account to you. And I think the minister was being diplomatic and then also professional. You said I should give you the account of the expenditure, how I expended it. I have done that. So I think he discharged his professional obligation. So it is up to Parliament to then deal with the issues. Because Parliament did not ask him any question. I don't think so. They asked him to present and he has presented. So he discharged his professional obligation as a minister. As I sit here as a public financial management expert, I will not have any basis to agree or disagree with the minister on the content unless I am allowed to do further verification and validation of the figures at the institutional level.
Okay. All right, Doc. I want to thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Thank you, my brother, for the good work. We always appreciate that.
Thank you, Doctor. Right. Dr. Eric Odosai is a governance and public financial management expert joining us on Inside Page to give us his brief thoughts about the finance minister's appearance before Parliament to account for COVID-related expenditure. Let me now come in-house. But before I do that, let me announce that those of you who have opinions and views to express, 05000 25621. 05000 25621. Let's now listen to the Speaker of Parliament. Let's watch how he directed that both the Health and Finance Committee work together to probe further into the COVID-related expenditure. Let's watch this before we come in-house.
It was paid into the consolidated fund, or it was received by the trust and kept by the trust, and the trust itself was expending it. And so we need to go beyond the minister and to get in touch with the trust to be able to unearth these things. And therefore, there's a need for further investigation. It's with this direct that the Committee of Finance, ably supported by the Committee of Health, should investigate and inquire into the total receipts referred to as COVID-19 funds and how those funds were applied for the betterment of the people of this country.
All right, welcome back. So you heard the Speaker of Parliament. That's the Honorable Sumana Bagbing, 5-time Member of Parliament for Nadoli Kalio. Let's now finally watch the Honorable Atuforsin, who held a presser after everything was said and done. He says he would make sure that he holds each and everybody accountable for how the COVID-related expenditure was prosecuted. Let's watch it.
Spent 600 million Ghana cedis. 600 million Ghana cedis. In the previous year, at the time that you have not cut sod and you have not started construction, it is very difficult to comprehend where the money went. So my brothers and sisters, let me assure you that we members of parliament from the minority side of the divide will ensure that the right thing is done. We will ask the minister responsible for finance to account for every penny. And not only the minister responsible for finance, but most importantly, the ministers and head of COVID entities that spent the money. Because the Minister of Finance obviously will have to make the releases. But somebody awarded a contract. Somebody spent the money. And we will haul all of them one by one.
All right, so that's the Honourable Member of Parliament. That's Honourable Atuforsin, speaking to a cross-section of journalists about the commitment of the House to make sure, or the commitment of the minority to make sure that every penny that was collected and expended is accounted for. Let me now come in-house. I have Pagri Wachidankwa, who is governance spokesperson on governance and security, and then also the Honourable Mutala Ibrahim Mohammed. Now, Mutala, there's a man, there's actually an uncle of mine who is very fond of you. He says that anytime he sees you on TV, he's excited. I don't know whether I have his permission to mention his name, but maybe at some point when he gives me the permission, I'll do that. But let me come to Pagri. Pagri, now, people have asked this question that why did it have to take the finance minister so long to appear before the House? I mean, the minority has been calling for the finance minister to appear before the House since last year. It had to take the speaker to basically threaten that if the finance minister does not appear before the House, he shouldn't come before the House and seek for any loans for government business. That's why the finance, well, I'm saying that's why. It was after that which the finance minister then appeared before the House. What was the finance minister hiding? Why was the finance minister dragging his feet? Why was he dilly-dallying with this matter? Because essentially it deepened suspicions and perception that something untoward was happening with the COVID-related expenditure.
So, Moro, very good morning to you and to your viewers and to my senior Honorable Mutala. I do not think that the finance minister delayed in coming into parliament. I think that in the context of governance, when you're a finance minister and you disburse funds, and ensuring that you are managing the economy very well, because one of the roles of the finance ministry is to ensure that you are effectively managing and balancing the books. And if you have disbursed money into various sectors of the economy, it's important that you get feedback on how those monies have been expended before you can adequately now meet the legislative arm of government. I believe very well that as a government, and even for the finance minister, we have shown credibility very clearly in accounting to the good people of this country, right up from 2019 when COVID-19 broke out up until today, when we have an opportunity to now have a bit of a bird's eye view of how much we have expended as a result of COVID-19. And this week, we can clearly say that the government has struck a lot more success in being credible, in being transparent, and in being open. It stated very clearly that over the period between 2019, 2020, 2021, and even up until date, you are aware how COVID-19 has plunged the lives of many people globally. The data shows that close to about 534 million people have had COVID-19 related cases, and close to about 6 million people have died. And so clearly, this is a global pandemic that if you really want to do justice to the books and to the account, you need to ensure that you have a greater collection of everybody within the revenue. The data shows that we spent close to about raised close to about 19.3 billion Ghana cedis, spent about 11.6 billion Ghana cedis. And as a result of COVID-19 and how many people were not working, there was a shortfall in revenue. And so the extra 8.14 billion was used to upkeep the revenue, which we couldn't raise as a result of the fact that people were not working. Right. And I think that if you look at how credible, these documents are, and how the conversations that I've been in, some of the committees that I've been in, I've clearly seen that government has been very, very consistent. With all of the monies that we have accrued. Government of Ghana contingency fund gave out close to about 1.2 billion Ghana cedis.
Before you even get into the specifics of the monies that we got or received and how the monies were expended, back to the issue about why the finance minister had to drag his feet that long to appear before the House. When you peruse the data that the finance minister presented to the House, you'd realize essentially that, what the finance minister did was to repeat most of the things that he's already presented before the House. So 2020 budget, 2021 budget, and 2022 budget. So then he raises the question. So then he begs the question that if the exercise was just to present a repeated version of everything else you have done in the past, 2020, 2021, 2022, in a 15-page document, why did it have to take you close to a year for you to appear before the House?
Moro, the budget is different from an expenditure. What the finance minister presented to Parliament this week is an expenditure of the COVID-19 whole response.
I agree.
It's very different.
I get the point I'm making. But the point I'm trying to make is that the numbers and the figures that he gave us are figures that had appeared in the 2020 budget, 2021 budget, and so my point is he didn't present anything entirely new. That's the point I'm trying to make.
No, I agree with you,
yes.
But I need to be able to also state very clearly on record that this is an expenditure of how much we have used the money for and what we use the money to do.
Yes.
The budget was a projected budget of what we intended to do,
to raise,
in the line
and how you
item
intend to spend
and
it.
how we intend to spend it. This is a proper breakdown of every single thing. You clearly see how we give a total breakdown, how we're able to raise the 19.3 billion Ghana cedis. Bank of Ghana COVID bond, we had about 10 billion. EU gave us about 504 million Ghana cedis. AFDB, the African continent, they gave us about 405 million Ghana cedis. All of that. IMF gave us $1 billion US dollars. All of that. World Bank gave us some money. Government of Ghana. So you could clearly see the various data that we had in terms of the mobilization. And then if you come through, also gives us how we spent the money. And I think that is very different from the budget in terms of what we had expected that we use the money to do. The emergency preparatory response plan, the budget support allocation, the financial framework for the COVID-19. You look at all those breakdowns, you clearly see the health response, how we saw that there was a major deficit in the health infrastructure, for which reason, as a government, we are building Agenda 111, and the president has categorically stated that by the time we hand over power in 2025, 7th of January, to another MPP government, we would have completed all 111 district hospitals, which is going to be one of the most significant health infrastructure in this country. I don't think that anybody can run away from how robust our government is, and how accountable our government is, and how credible our government is. We also spoke very clearly about the security operations, the evacuations, and the coordination. You remember very well that at the time when COVID-19 began, there were 5 key things that we were very concerned about. And I think that one of them really was that we wanted to limit and stop the importation of the virus, for which reason we needed to close our borders. We closed the airport, we closed our land borders, we closed the sea borders, so that people cannot bring in the virus. And anybody that even came into the country, we had to quarantine at the expense of the state. And so we're giving a good account of how we have used all these resources to make sure that we save people's lives. We also needed to make sure that we contain the spread of the virus. mean, so it was the continual cliche that when you move, the virus will move, which was stated by the Honorable Minister then for Education, now Minister for Energy, the Honorable Matthew Opoku Prempeh. We also needed to provide adequate care for the sick. I mean, so we brought in close to about 59,000 health workers which were added to the already existing health workers. We made sure that we increased their salaries. 50% of that was increased. So a number of these things we provided. We made sure that we limit the impact of the virus on social and the life of the country in terms of the economy. And then finally, we needed to ensure that we have domestic capacity and deepen our own self-reliance. So if you look at how well we have managed the COVID case, I mean, at the time when we even reopened schools to make sure that young people have an opportunity to do their final exams in level 400, in SSS, and then even the BECE, many countries on this continent had not. I mean, so look at all of that. I mean, Sputnik V, the vaccines that we needed to procure, and even this week, you're aware that the president was in Rwanda, and they cut sword for the manufacturing company that is going to manufacture our vaccines. So you see that clearly this is a government that is operating an open door policy. There is a government that is willing continually to let the good people of the country come to terms with how we have managed their resources effectively. And I believe very well that if people have other concerns, there is an audit committee. Many of the places where these monies were disbursed to, the implementing agencies, whether it is ministries, departments, and agencies and municipalities, I mean, they have internal auditors, and then external auditors would also come. Anybody can be able to pick up the books and the papers and be able to see how their monies were expended. At a very bigger level and the national level, government needs to put together policies.
Right.
Then when government puts the policies, it comes to the policy implementation, which is the various MMDAs. And then it comes to the policy takers, which is all of us. And so if you look at the three levels of the policy as it relates to COVID-19, I believe very well that we have managed the COVID-19 funds credibly. We have been accountable. We have been very open to the good people of this country. And the records are there to prove.
How do you explain a situation where you programmed to raise 19.3 billion? Finally, you raised 18 point something billion. I think 18.1, which was the actual receipts that you got. But then you say that you spent 12 point something, let's say 12 billion, a little over 12 billion. And so there's close to 7 billion, which the minority is asking, where is the 7 billion? What have you spent the money on? Why isn't the finance minister accounting for that 7 billion, Ghana cedis? What response do you have to that question? Where is the 7 billion cedis?
So it's close to 7 billion, but it's around 6 billion thereabout.
Yes,
if you look at 12 and 8,
in excess of 6 billion.
Yeah, in excess of 6 billion.
Yeah, it's more than 7 billion.
No, that's another leg of the conversation.
It's 7.3 billion. It's
Right.
more than 7 billion.
It's close to 7
No,
billion.
the reason why I want us to work with what they've told us. There are other aspects of the statements that I'm going to bring his attention to so that he can help us with. Yeah, so where is the 7 billion?
So I stated very clearly that, during the COVID pandemic, you realized that there was a shortfall in revenue.
Yeah.
That shortfall in revenue meant that there were people that were supposed to be working to be contributing their taxes. For which reason that as a result of that period, many countries went on lockdowns. We went on lockdown as well. And we made sure that, people had free light, free electricity. We fed people in Accra, in Kumasi, in Tema, and in Kaswa, people who lived in deprived communities. So that amount of 7 billion was used to upkeep the revenue that was shortfall within that period.
So why then didn't the finance minister add that to the expenditure, the COVID-related expenditure? Why did he leave that out and say we spent just 12 billion? If indeed what you're saying is true, which is that the 7 billion cedis which Ghanaians are asking, where is it? If you're saying that yes, indeed, that 7 billion cedis was used to take care of, people's salaries and pay utilities and so on and so forth, why didn't the finance minister add it to the general expenditure, pattern or items?
It's an automatic response of the differentials. If you look at the differentials, you would know what it was used for, and which is why I've stated that it was used to upkeep the revenue shortfalls that was not coming in.
Okay, that's fine. The Honorable Murtala Mohammed is also here. I don't know whether you're convinced by what he said. He says all this talk about where's 7 billion, they can account for it. They've used to pay salaries of public servants who are still working, despite the fact that there was COVID and people were, how do you call it, government wasn't getting its targeted revenue and so on and so forth, but then had to pay salaries. Government had to support people with utilities. So they used that 7 billion, which the minority is asking its whereabouts, to support the budget shortfalls. You're still not convinced?
Moru, next time when your producer is getting an expert who is MPP to speak, get another expert who is NDC to speak.
Okay.
Dr. Odro has an appointment in this government.
Dr. Odro,
yes, so he could not be speaking.
You mean he's an appointee of the president?
Yeah, he has an appointment.
So you think his professional competence is compromised?
But that was demonstrated in the kind of response he gave to you. So my point is that...
No, but we spoke to him in his capacity as a governance and a financial, public financial expert.
Who is also an appointee of this government. And when he was speaking, clearly his speech and his response resonates to the position taken by the MPP entirely. The MPP have always argued that the Auditor General's report is enough. And that was the tangent he proceeded with. He made certain pronouncements that I completely disagree with him. He says that the Speaker could have invited the Auditor General. He should get something very clear. The legislative arm is an independent arm of government. And the legislative arm has the right, the authority to institute an investigation into any matter. It doesn't matter if there is any other state institution that is handling it. So as an expert in governance, I know he knew of this and he's abreast with this fact. He was just trying to please his appointing authority. That is what I suspect. He said that Parliament cannot independently, and I was happy independently validate the kind of information that is given. And I was happy when you raised the issue to him that there are seasoned auditors in Parliament. There are seasoned accountants in Parliament. There are seasoned governance experts in Parliament. To that extent, the people of this country, and through their representatives, have the capacity to validate whatever information that is given to us. Mind you, whatever monies that was supposed or intended to be spent by the Minister for Finance in the name of COVID ought to have been approved by Parliament. So Parliament has the right to find out how you expended those money. And there can't be any institution that will be in a better position to appreciate what was approved and what has been expended than Parliament. So I disagree entirely with the points he made.
When you look at what the finance minister came to do, do you think it was a useful exercise? Because he only came to give headline figures.
Absolutely. And he said, Dr. Odro also said, and for me, it was shocking to me, he said that it's become political. Dr. Odro, we live in a democracy. We are practicing politics. Even if the Auditor General does the work and submits it to Parliament, it will be political. Even the Auditor General, the analysis he himself made, he was not making the analysis absolutely with the lenses of an expert. There were political nuances he was also adding to it just to satisfy the appointing authority. So what is he talking about? It is political. I'm saying that everything, even if we get Matusala to come and audit this COVID spending, even if we get the Pope to come and audit the expenses of the COVID funds, it will become politics. People will discuss it. Is it because it's been discussed in Parliament? And the Speaker directive, for me, is the best. This is a bipartisan. The committees for health and finance are made up of both NDC and MPP in equal numbers. There can't be anybody or any institution that can properly do a proper investigation into this matter than these two committees. And the committees haven't done their work. They submit it to Parliament. So what it simply means is that the 32 million Ghanaians are auditing the expenses of the COVID funds.
Right.
That is what it means. After Parliament does the work, because we are in Parliament representing the people. So it means that the 32 million Ghanaians have audited the accounts of the COVID, how the COVID money is
There's another constitutionally mandated body, which is called the Auditor General's Office.
Whatever the Auditor General does has got nothing to do with what we are doing. Let's get something very clear. Whatever the Auditor General does has got nothing to do with what Parliament is doing. The Auditor General is an independent body mandated by law to do what it is doing. Parliament is also an independent body, an organ of the state, mandated by law to do what we are doing. I thought that Dr. Odro was going to say that what Parliament is engaged in is illegal. He said that maybe he thinks. That's your opinion, and I respect that.
Right.
But what Parliament is doing for me is the best. But let me also make this point very clear.
Mm-hmm.
The Minister for Finance, and I don't want to forget this, he said that their government increased the salaries of health workers. That's not true. You never increased the salaries of health workers during COVID. That is absolutely false.
I agree with you.
No, yes, he also said
That's
that.
true.
He also that because of revenue shortfalls, by the information given to us by this government and this Minister for Finance, you generated more revenue during COVID than when we were not in COVID.
Right.
COVID started in 2020, isn't it? Juxtapose the revenue we generated in 2019 against 2020.
True.
Juxtapose that revenue we got in 2019 against the revenue we generated in 2021. So that is also not accurate. What government did with regards to some of the health workers were that they took some and they promised to give them some extra allowances. Some
50% of basic salary
I'm saying that
for
some
frontline workers.
I'm saying that some never got those allowances. And
50%
I'm saying that some
allowances, yes.
Please, allowances.
Yes, 50%.
But our allowances salary.
But 50%.
No, our allowances salary.
Basic salary. Allowance.
I'm saying that
50% of their basic salary is given as allowance.
You said that government, I wrote it, increased salaries of health workers. That is not accurate. Allowances are not salaries.
50% of basic salary.
As allowances, is that not?
As allowances.
So that's not salary. If you say there is an increase in salaries of workers, salary is different from allowance.
Okay, I take it back.
Exactly.
So government gave 50% of basic salary.
Of those who were engaged.
Of those who were engaged.
And in fact, some of them didn't
A
even.
sizable number of them.
No, some of them didn't even get. They went on radio. They went on radio, lampoon and lambasted your
I think let's
failing
make
to do
some
that.
progress.
But that
Let's
is
make some
just by
progress.
the way.
Yes.
But I didn't hear that they went
You
on
see,
radio.
you had. Oh, they did. You had ample time. I didn't interject, so I beg you. Let me finish.
Thank you, sir.
Please proceed.
The minister was invited to appear before Parliament. The minister has no any other choice than to respond to questions filed by members of Parliament for and on behalf of the people they represent. Mm-hmm. I was one of the members of Parliament who filed questions for the minister to answer. This minister has continuously showed disrespect to Parliament. And we want him to know, if he's a lord in this government, he's not a lord to Parliament of Ghana. And he can't be a lord to the people of this country. When Parliament invites you to come and answer questions, it is not the individual members of Parliament who have filed the questions that you are answering to. You are answering to their representatives. There are questions that are constituency related. There are questions that are national related. And at any point in time, members of ministers are under law, are compelled to appear before Parliament. We filed questions. This minister promised he was coming to answer those questions. He never came without any information or reasons given to Parliament why he failed to come. Now another date was fixed through his approval. He failed again. Before we went on recess, he was supposed to appear. He refused to appear before Parliament. You know why he appeared? It took a threat of the Speaker for him to come. And in fact, that threat was supported by the MPP members of Parliament. You remember when he was supposed to appear on that day? He didn't come. And the NDC, through our leadership, said, look, we were never going to entertain anything coming from the Minister of Finance. We didn't say coming from this government. Mm-hmm. Because other ministers, I must admit, have consistently appeared before Parliament to respond to questions that are asked by members of Parliament. When we said that, then the Speaker then went into conclave with the leadership of both NDC and MPP.
Yep.
And then when they came back, the Speaker made that pronouncement. Mm-hmm. So the position, the threat issued by the Speaker was sanctioned by both Honorable Haruna Idrisu and the leadership, and Honorable Chairman Sabonsu and the leadership. If they never sanctioned the threat, they would have raised an objection.
Right.
They never had any problem. And I'm aware, on that day, the MPP members of Parliament wanted to boycott Parliament should the minister appear before Parliament because of the monies he criminally and illegally doled out for the purposes of the architectural design for the cathedral. They made a position. They wanted to do that. They can come on TV and radio and deny that. But this was the information we got from them. Because I remember even when we went into the chamber, they were not even in the chamber, just few of them were seated. And some of them had indicated to us that they were not going to appear before Parliament. So the minister has shown consistent disrespect to Parliament. He can't be a lord to anybody in this country. He can only be a lord to President Nana Addo and the MPP government. And the threat was the reason why the minister appeared before Parliament to answer these questions. Now, a lot of the questions were COVID-related. But let me just deal with the question I asked before I come to look at the specific issues that my brother presented with alacrity when he knows too well that he was presenting statements that will have the truth. The minister, I wanted to know simply how much revenue we have generated as a state through the sales of power to our neighbors.
Okay.
President Mahama, visionary as he was and still is, invested in increasing our energy capacity. We experienced doom so. And if you observed in history, we have experienced doom so in this country at every 7 years or 10 years. President Mahama didn't want us to experience that again. So against the position of many members of his government, including myself, that he needed to have this knee-jerk response, let's find solution to it, and within the next 7 years, 10 years, we experienced that. He said, no, even if it costs my government, but let's find a permanent solution to it. And that occasioned the huge investment in increasing our capacity. You lampooned that, you described that as reckless, and you said that we didn't need that. Now, you celebrated when you sold energy to our neighbors. If we didn't have excess capacity, would we be in the position to sell the excess to our neighbors? You celebrated that. So I wanted to know how much we have generated since 2017 till date. The minister in his recent response indicated that it was the Ministry of Energy that should be answering the question because VRA takes the money and then the supervisory ministry is the Ministry of Energy. So that was what he had in the written response.
Okay.
But my question was an oral response. And I was going to challenge even that response because at the end of the day, whatever the Minister of Energy gets from the VRA, they would have to account to the Minister for Finance at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you should be in a better position to tell us how much we have generated. Now, when he appeared and I asked the question, he answered and quickly said that he thinks we make about $140 million a year.
Oh, a year. Right.
For
selling excess capacity. Okay. So your point is, how do you hypocritically celebrate an achievement you lampooned in the past?
Yes.
So that the very person that you said was incompetent has today done something for you that you're benefiting from, and you're happily telling us.
Exactly.
So that's the point you're making.
So the 100, just multiply $140 million from 2017. That's 6 years.
Yes.
That will give you almost $1 billion.
Thereabout, yes.
That is how much you have made from the visionary investment of President Mahama. So when he came and gave that response, and he said, around, we are making about 140. And I said, look, this house is a house of records. Parliament is not a house of conjecture. We want specific answers. He came and said that I was being hostile towards him because nobody has ever confronted him in this government of his inept, his incompetent, and his reckless decisions. So he could not fathom why a young man should confront him with some of these issues. I was confronting him because I represent people of Tamale Central. And that is the level of arrogance, the morass of arrogance of this minister. Every minister is complaining. Every member of parliament of MPP, they are complaining. Yet they don't have the audacity to confront him when he's messing up the
complaining
economy.
to you? Complaining to you?
They complain to everybody. Who that? What did Honorable
that they have issues with the finance minister, but they cannot tell him?
What did Honorable Atachan say on TV? How the minister refused to release monies meant for the ministry. For whatever reason, their personal reasons, did I force him to say that? So when he said that, and I said, look, I wasn't holding a dagger before you to tell us that you are getting about $140 million. And then he had problem with it that we are being hostile. If it takes hostility to get the needed answers for the people of this country, we will forever remain hostile towards him. He ought to respect the parliament and respect the people of this country.
Okay.
When you refuse to appear before parliament, you are not disrespecting the members of parliament. You are disrespecting the people they are representing. And he must know, he didn't come to be a minister with his resources from data bank. He came to be a minister with our resources, our taxes. And he owes us a duty and a responsibility to respond to the questions as and when we ask him to do so. But let's go to the specific issues. Moro, you said that he said 100 and he was saying it's about 101, about a little below 7 billion. No, it's 7.3 billion. As a matter of
explain that.
7.3, he himself stated in it.
Right.
He said we got 19 billion, 300 million, 600,000.
Yeah.
That's what he stated to us.
Yes.
Nobody wrote this.
That's in terms of the Monies
that
that
got
were
in the name of COVID.
that were accrued.
Yes, in the name of COVID.
In the name of COVID.
He said we got this. We borrowed. Don't say we got this. When you say we got this from IMF, we got this from World Bank, we borrowed.
Well, some were free.
When he says we got,
Yes.
it's like we borrowed for and on behalf of the people of this country. President Nana Addo is getting to 80 years. Myself and you, our children, our grandchildren will be paying these monies. So we borrowed the money. So he himself said, it's about 19 billion, 300 million, 600,000. That's what he provided.
Yes.
And this was not written at the NDC headquarters, where you say that the NDC propaganda. This was written by the minister. And he didn't just come to present it to us, he read it. Now, when he was to account for the monies he expended, how he expended those monies, he could only account for 12 billion.
Yes.
12 billion.
Yes.
So the question then is that because he accounted for 12 billion and 36,000 Ghana cedis.
Yes.
So we wanted to find out the 7.3 billion. Where is that money? He hasn't provided any evidence as to how those monies were expended. Another thing that was conspicuously missing was the COVID-19 trust fund. You remember there was a trust fund?
There was a trust fund, yeah.
And many Ghanaians contributed towards that.
Yes.
International organizations contributed towards that. Philanthropists, religious organizations, celebrities. Even myself and you with our HIPIC money, we all contributed towards the trust fund. He never mentioned the trust fund. So as we see today, we do not know how much was generated from the trust fund. We still do not know.
No, but he has mentioned it in the same paper that you have, that what is accounted for excludes the status of the trust fund.
Why must it exclude it? People, we want to know.
No, he doesn't have any information
He
about
can
the
tell
trust
us-
fund.
Please,
He said he doesn't have any information, at least for now.
He's the Minister for Finance. I have told you, these questions have been lingering. These questions have been sent to him for almost a year. These questions, he had to, under duress, appear before Parliament to respond to, have been with him for almost a year before we went on recess. He is the minister, supervisory minister of finance.
I agree with you.
Please play Moro. It's just like on this program, Moro, this program. Then next week, someone asks you, who appeared on your program? Then he says, oh, I have to check. Then you mention only my brother's name without mentioning my name. You think there can be any excuse to this? He is the minister. He manages the public purse. He manages the finances of this country. So he cannot tell us that he doesn't know. So even with the things that he deliberately shielded from the people of this country, and those he had the courage to even tell us how they were expended, it excluded 7.3 billion Ghana cedis. And let's look at even those he had the courage to tell us. You see, you spent over 1 billion Ghana cedis for mass reopening of schools. I mean, even if we wanted to have mass opening of schools for the continent of Africa, I don't think they will spend that much. I don't think so.
You're doubting the figures?
Why? I mean, you don't need rocket scientists to tell you that this is nothing but thievery.
Okay, so
another thing, and it's important I state this. Another thing that the minister mentioned, which I think that your people must understand. They spent the Agenda 111. I just realized that my good friend, Honorable John Kuma.
Yes.
The other day I told him that if he doesn't take his time, this minister will destroy him. This minister for finance.
You told him that?
Oh, I told him. John, you know myself and John.
You guys have been very close.
A long way. I said, look,
back in the day,
if you don't take your time, this minister for finance, he will destroy you. Your integrity will be shredded to pieces because he has none left. Look at what they have here. Provision of health infrastructure, Agenda 111.
Yes.
As at 2020, there was nothing like Agenda 111.
True, I agree with you. You
initially had what can be described as Agenda 88. That Agenda 88, what comes of it? Nothing.
We added on to it.
So what's your point with that?
The Agenda 111.
Yes.
You spent money before even you contemplated the Agenda 111, because the Agenda 111 you cut short in 2021.
Yes.
So how could you be spending money ahead of something that you are yet to cut short? And they spent about, how much is that?
600?
No, 763 million. What
on
was,
Agenda
what
111?
was allocated, yes. What was allocated was 1,476,000,000. That is the budget. And the revised budget was 779. Releases was 763 million.
Yes.
I mean, so how did they spend the money? Agenda 111, we have not even seen architectural designs. They don't even have land.
Oh, you can't say that.
Where? Tell me, in Tamale, in Northern region, where do you have your... In Northern region, where?
We have lands.
I say, I want to know in Northern region, where?
No, Honorable, please go ahead.
I'm saying that, what are the architectural designs? I challenge you to put that, let people see it. Have you awarded any contract? Or you have identified some farmland somewhere? Because the Agenda 88, you identify farmlands only for people to come out and say that this is my land. The state has not approached me for the purchases of those lands. So it stands to reason that once again, tricky. I think I've used the right.
Your tree is not bad. Your tree this morning hasn't been that bad at all.
In KNUST. So it's a trick. Another one they have, they said national COVID response. Hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis. Which response? What did they do that entails millions of Ghana cedis, hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis to be spent? What they had cost of economic revitalization, 1 billion. And they got about 530. Now, how did you revitalize? When you have said that you had revenue shortfall, you generated more revenue than that. Right. But you see, they should stop using the word free. It is unacceptable to continuously telling the people of this country that you gave them free water, free electricity. Moro, what is free? If you give me something today and you say it's free, and tomorrow I'm being asked to pay for it, do you have any moral justification to continuously use the word free to describe it? No, I'm asking you, be very honest.
No, it cannot be free because I'm paying for it.
Exactly. Yeah. As we sit today, we do not know whether we have paid for it or we are paying in excess. You gave people water, and at that time, my taps were not even flowing.
So you didn't enjoy it?
I didn't. In fact, I was buying water. That time, even the taps of that time, they were not. I was buying water. Many people were buying water. The other thing is that it was for some consumers, the electricity, not everybody.
Lifeline.
Today, whether you enjoyed it or not, you are being asked to pay for it. Is it fair? Because it was just for those who were consuming, power at certain, those they describe as lifeline consumers.
Yes.
Those who were not lifeline consumers never enjoyed it. Today, they are being asked to pay for it. Now, we are all paying for it. This government is not telling us, without even our approval, they were giving us free, they tricked us, we are now being asked to pay for it. Don't you think that governance advisor of government on governance, don't you think that as part of transparent governance and accountable governance, we ought to be told, so far this is how much we have generated as a result of the COVID levy for the purposes of the trick you pulled on us, for the purposes of the so-called free water and free electricity, so that we know this was how much was spent for the electricity, the free electricity and the free water. This is how much we have generated as a result of the tax we impose on you.
Yes.
What if we have paid more than we are now collecting? Do you think that it would be morally right for them to continuously take in that tax from the people of this country if we have actually finished paying for it? So I think that as part of transparency and accountable governance, I think that Dr. Odro should focus on things like this, because that is what the people of this country expect from this government. They also said that emergency rollout of COVID vaccines. Why? My brother, in this country, we know of the thievery that went into the Sputnik V thing. We know when you came and escalated prices just for the purposes of someone chop. Your government made money in a calamitous situation that the people of this country were facing. Isn't this immoral that when lives were being lost, this government was focused on making money? COVID-19 test or antigen test at airport, Frontier Health.
Right.
The president's family owns it. That's a fact. That is a fact. Tell me that is a fact. You want me to mention the names of those behind it? That is a fact. Now that Frontier Health, the Minister for Health himself, when he appeared before Parliament Appointment Committee, said that they operated initially without a license. I didn't force him to say it. It means that they operated initially illegally. And they charged, in fact, we're the only country that was charging $150 per antigen test. And on every $150, Moro, government of Ghana was getting $2. As we sit now, I filed a question to the Minister for Transport to appear before Parliament.
Yes.
To answer the questions as to whether the contract with the Frontier Health was properly entered into because I have evidences. And 2, to tell us how much they have generated. And to tell us the contract between Frontier Health, the Ghana Airport Company, and that foreign bank. And why they set up an offshore account, keeping the money there.
You mean you are discovering things?
I want to know. Look, there is
Or
another...
you want to know?
I have evidences.
Yes.
I want the minister to appear
Before
to
the
Parliament
House, yes.
under oath.
Okay.
To give us a response and whether he will land himself into trouble or not. Another thing, and you see, all these things in the name of COVID, all these things, people were dying. President Nana Addo's family was interested in making money at the expense of the lives of the people of this country. And now you come here and then you tell me that we managed COVID very well. We didn't manage COVID better than Senegal. We didn't manage COVID better than Ivory Coast. We didn't manage COVID better than Togo. As a matter of fact, we didn't manage COVID better than Niger. That you must know. And none of these countries went to the IMF for $3 billion loan. What you put there was what was given. As we see today, none of our neighbors went to the World Bank for over $500 million loan. None of our neighbors got over $1 billion from the European Union and other agencies. None of our neighbors. As a matter of fact, they didn't only pay electricity bills and water bills for their citizens. The difference is that they haven't asked the citizens to pay for them. They gave them rent, free rent. As a matter of fact, Senegal paid for rents of those who could not afford. They didn't do that, and after a year, they turn around and say, we tricked you, pay back the money. They never did that. So when you want to boast as to how you manage COVID, please, you should do that in Nyasaland. As a matter of fact, and we have borrowed more than them, their economies are not in shambles like ours is. This economy is in tatters. And tell me one single success story this Minister for Finance can talk of. Tell me one. You see, when President Mahama, and it's important we look at this, and I'm just concluding on this.
Yes, please do.
President Mahama was described as incompetent. The entire NDC government was described as incompetent. At the time when you describe President Mahama's government as incompetent, unemployment was 6.8. Today, unemployment is 19% plus. At the time when you describe President Mahama as incompetent, debt to GDP was a little below 60%. Today, it's over 80%. At the time when you describe President Mahama's government as incompetent, inflation was 15%. Today, it's 27%, and only God knows where it is now. At the time when you describe President Mahama's government as incompetent, the dollar to the cedi was 3.6.
Well, why are you bringing these issues up?
It's because of how abysmally this economy
is
managed. And it is managed by 3 people. The president, the vice president, who is the chairman of the economic management team, and that management is also done by the Minister for Finance, who refused to appear before Parliament, and only when he appeared before Parliament, he could not account for what is there. And I can tell you, and I say this with all the sincerity, that this Minister for Finance is still the Minister for Finance because he uses Oforiata. I can tell you, if he never had any family relations with this president, he wouldn't have been there. That is why I ask you to look into the cameras and sincerely tell me whether this man has not failed in all the areas. Look, every loan that we enter into...
But isn't it entirely up to the president to be able to tell whether indeed his appointee is doing well or not?
Don't we have the right as citizens?
Well, you can critique, but the decision is his to take at the end of the day.
We have the right because our taxes are the taxes that
no
are
doubt.
used. Please, our taxes
you do have
are
the
taxes
right
to let us talk.
Yes,
And
but you're saying that the reason the president is keeping him there is because he is he's a cousin of the president.
See, Moro,
and I'm saying
Moro,
that. And I'm saying that.
Moro.
I'm saying that.
I think
I'm
that
saying
it's important.
that. Beside that, beside that,
it's important.
don't you think that it is entirely? Just one second. I'll come to you. I'll come to just one second.
You have your 10.
Don't you think that it is entirely?
Spoken for over 50 minutes.
It is entirely up to the president.
50 minutes.
Yes.
No, honorable. Hold on a second. Isn't it entirely honorable? Isn't it entirely up to the president to decide whether somebody he has appointed to do a job is doing a good job or not? Not entirely up to you to decide for the president. You can express your opinions about the performance of the minister.
The reason why we have parliament. The reason why we have parliament is to play, and once again, Dr. Odru said that parliament's responsibility is to legislate. Not only that, apart from to legislate, we also have oversight and hold governments accountable.
I agree.
That is why setting up a committee in parliament to investigate is one of the processes of holding governments accountable.
Okay.
I'm saying that the reason why we have parliament is to ask these questions for and on behalf of our people.
Okay.
When I go to Tamale Center, people demand to know why this minister is still at post.
All right.
And it's not only NDC people who are demanding to know, even
That's fine.
MPP people.
That's fine. Let
So
me now go to
I speak for
on
my
their
conscience,
behalf.
whether NDC or MPP. And I
speak
speak
on their
for him.
behalf.
He knows
All
that
right.
the Minister for
Now,
Finance
let me
is
come
a
to
mess. He
Pargrave.
knows
Pargrave, I don't know that you have any quick responses to what the Honorable Murtala Mohammed has said, because I have my own set of questions I want to ask you as well.
So,
yes, so
Moro,
please go ahead.
I think let me start from Agenda 111.
Sure.
I think that it's important that we set the record straight.
Yes.
In Agenda 111, we have close to about 290 constructors in
Yes.
all. I mean, I'm going to set this. And we have mobilized about 174 of the lands. And 89 of the sites are already working in terms of foundations works that are
Can you
being
mention
done.
one for me?
70 sites. You know, Honorable is trying to interject me.
Oh, I'm just asking.
70
Yes,
sites
Northern
have
Region
been
1.
cleared. I mean, we are, however, having challenges with 8 sites that are unavailable in Nima, Adenta, Kokomlemle, Dakuman. I mean, as a result of the development that has happened there. And you see, it's important that we look at the impact of Agenda 111 and what it's going to do for this country. I mean, clearly, obviously, we wanted to do 88 districts. We realized that we needed to even add more. And I mean, it's through the visionary leadership of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, for which reason we are here today.
Right.
And so let's put the Agenda 111 in that context.
Okay.
That by the time we are done with the various zones, and it's demarcated at various places. I mean, the various districts that we have selected where there is not that hospital to that befitting standard. We want to be able to put a befitting hospital there. And then we're also looking into places where we can be able to even put psychiatric hospitals. We are going to refurbish the Accra Psychiatric Hospital, put one in Takrade, in Adenta, all of those other places. So let's not water down the approach of Agenda 111. So that's to put it in record. Now, in terms of COVID-19 and the management of that, I mean, Moro, I think that is very evidential. I mean, unless, of course, you haven't been in this country. It's very evidential through the open door policy of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, continually updating the Ghanaian people. Right up from the 1st of March, 2020, when we started recording our first 2 cases, up until this year when we had to lift up some of the bans. You clearly would see the vociferous nature and the leadership that President has brought together. I think that it's inappropriate for my very good senior, Honorable Murtala, to state that we have not managed the COVID-19 pandemic well and that other countries have managed it better.
I haven't said that. I said
than us.
you haven't managed it better than Senegal.
You
haven't managed it better than Ivory Coast.
I believe that
you
we
haven't
have managed
managed
it.
you have borrowed more than them.
I believe very well that we have managed the COVID-19 pandemic better than any continental leader on this continent of Africa. And I put it on record, clearly.
How many lives were lost in Ghana?
Nana Addo Dankwa, well, 6 million people died globally.
No, in Ghana.
In Ghana, about 1,400 people died.
How many lives were lost in Senegal?
That's it. No, you see,
so tell
what
me.
is the population of Senegal to the population of Ghana?
It doesn't
No,
matter.
No, it doesn't matter. I mean,
I think you should
does
allow
matter.
him to
It's
land so that if
important,
you have
see.
any...
And
Yeah.
if you look at it very well, I mean, I don't know. I had COVID. I mean, I had COVID. I was in the hospital for
I had it
28
2
days.
times.
Okay, you had 2 times. I
had
had it only
2
once. You know, but clearly we need to be able to appreciate leadership where leadership has done their best and critique leadership where leadership needs to be critiqued. And I think that those things are important. I mean, on all other related issues of the Honorable Minister for Finance, the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, I believe very well that the Parliamentary Select Committee or the Appointment Committee vetted him. If the Honorable Minister for Finance was not good for this country, the Parliament Appointment Committee would have failed him. And so let's not water down the approach of his level of competence. It is this finance minister who came and realized that there was a mismanagement in the financial sector and decided that it's important that we clean up the financial market. And so we cleaned up that financial market. And so let's put it is this same finance minister that took this country out of IMF. I mean, we finished the IMF program in 2019.
You didn't take us out of IMF.
What did we do?
You went back. It's true. Facts are facts.
So you see, so let's put these things, and let's not put things by family and all of those other things that because he bears the Ofori-Atta name, for which reason he's still the finance minister. I think that the good people of this country have seen his work. They value the work that he has done. they look at all successive finance ministers. And look, we since 1957, we have never had a global pandemic of this nature that has halted many economies of the world. And we have thought outside the box on issues of unemployment. It's a major concern for every single government in this world. I have looked at the data, and in fact, I am increasingly troubled. Of course, there are many young people that are unemployed, many graduates who have first degree, second degree, PhD that are unemployed. But which is why, as a government, we are rolling out one of the most innovative entrepreneurial plan. Because how can a country develop if we do not have the backbone of the private sector? We're rolling out an entrepreneurial plan of having 1 million young people go into their own innovative ideas of starting their own businesses with a Youth Start initiative. And so let's put these things into proper perspective and context. When we put it into proper perspective and context, we encourage the young people that there's hope because of a truth. By the time we get to 2063, the AU has stated that the entire continent, and in fact the entire world, is going to have the highest number of young people, close to about 1 billion on this continent of Africa. So we need a leader that is visionary enough, who is able to prepare the next generation of young people of a truth. Yes, every government that comes does borrow. It's a concern to me, it's a concern to you, it's a concern to him, because clearly when we grow, and yesterday I was having conversations with people, if God should give us an extra 50 years, I will be here, you would be here, he would be here, many of our leaders will not be here. So clearly we need to be able to ensure that the decisions that we are making impacts everybody generationally. Which is why, for me, the 1 million young people who would have an opportunity to start their own businesses, will become the Dangotes of Ghana, will become the Jack Ma's of Ghana. We need to encourage them. And so let's look at it robustly.
Whilst at it.
Continually
Whilst at
think
it.
outside the box.
So whilst
of
at
how
it.
we can be able to address these issues.
That's fine.
And let's not look at issues of
but
persons
whilst at
like
it.
the frontline health service. People have bid for contracts. People have an opportunity.
They didn't.
People have an opportunity to enter
There's
into
a sole
businesses. I am not aware that this frontline health services belongs to anybody of blood relation
really?
to the president, Nana Addo
Really?
Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Let's be able to ensure that we don't just be throwing dust into the public eyes.
Don't tempt
But
me.
whilst
So
at it.
it's important that these are citizens of this country. Citizens of this country have an opportunity to engage in various businesses, and it's open to the Ghanaian people.
All right, let's do
to
this quickly.
continually be involved in
Sorry,
it.
we have to do this quickly. We're going to Teishi. As you can see on the shots on your screen, the chairman of the Jospin Group of companies is marking a 1 week celebration of his late father. And you can see him and a host of other family members. I'm told the vice president himself is there. And so we would let you know what is happening
This government
on the grounds, and then we will come back in-house and continue with our conversation on the finance minister's appearance before Parliament, after which we would use the next 30 minutes to discuss the matters about the cathedral. So those were shots from the family house of the chairman of the Jospin Group of Companies, Dr. Siao Ejepon at Teishi Nungwa. So yes, that's what is happening there. So should we go there and listen to the woman?
Yadamwase Sabre Reverend Anklato Ewaha Anna
Cutting to bring you live updates on what's happening with the 1 week celebration of the late father of the chairman of the Jospin Group of Companies, Dr. Joseph Siao Ejepon. And you can tell, or you can see from the space that, yes, so that's the members of the diplomatic corps who are fully represented. I'm sure some of them are also, I believe some of them are also employees of Dr. Siao Ejepon. So yes, dignitaries exchanging pleasantries with the family. There's also obviously some performances here and there. I'm told the vice president has just left. I don't know, is the vice president still there or he's just left? Okay, I'm told the vice president has left. Yes,
Yo.
so we're putting, yes, but you can tell it's very packed. Traditional leaders, everybody's there. The members of the clergy, politicians, everybody's there. The media fully represented. Yeah, so that's what happens when you're a good man. You would be definitely supported, fully supported to celebrate the 1 week of your father's so
Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud
Wawumia
Obaye wakasa edi achene na namadu na fodie empenisi ewobi na kowie bidia ene Dr. Siao Ejapon no ene kofare by Edmasum Lion wasi ensi so na nto abusua nyina da mampenia bedi achire so kita ne nsam enesi kai 10,000 Ghana cedis 10,000 Ghana cedis. What is so swa? Tuna na namadu na fo nyina ya fanka mpota engufem afei adofo ayede bia wode aba breno abie ekwan na da ho a ya fa ne nyina entodwa prekon afei atitiri ni anintini ya wonom aduru ha ebema na namadu na fo yakọ ebinie Honorable George Anda, former member of parliament Awutu Senya Sabre Wabahanamo Sanso Ena Oraire Abna Poku, managing director Absa Bank Afe Professor Kwamina Ahoy, former minister for local government Wabahanamo Ebabema and Nanomediana for Yako. Honorable Carlos Ahinkra, also I am Rashabujani Edima Tema West. Afei Enayaba Honorable Stephen Asamwa Boateng NPP Amanyokuo no wono ena wo pre afi se NPP for ento aban fa manom na amameye dwamtire ni chairman
where the chairman of the Jospon Group of Companies observing the 1 week celebration of his dad, his late dad, and as you can tell from the screens, almost everybody's there: the media, traditional rulers, the clergy, members of the diplomatic corps. Everybody's there to support this good man in this very trying times. And we're waiting to get the feed so that we can get the audio. One of my colleagues is also there. He'll be shortly joining us to tell us exactly. Yes, Esther is there actually to be telling us what exactly has happened in the last 1 hour or so since the program began. Now, I understand that the vice president has also been there already to commiserate with the Jospon Group of Companies chairman, Dr. Joseph Siao. So as soon as we get through to Esther, we would be taking a live feed from Teshi Nungwa. Now we'll come back in the house. I have Pagri Wachidankwa, who is the government spokesperson on security and governance, and then also the MP for Tamale Central. That's the Honorable Mutala Mohammed is also here with us. Now we're discussing. Now we're going to be wrapping up on their own views about how the finance minister performed when he appeared before the August House. Now, Pagri Dankwa is on the floor. He was talking to us about, he was responding to some of the things that Murtala Mohammed has said. So, I don't know whether you're done, because you're saying that when we look at what the government intends to do going forward for the youth, the plans that the government has for the young people of this country, are you saying because of that we shouldn't hold the government accountable?
Not at all.
Okay, so if we agree that we have to hold the government accountable, I have a few questions that I need to ask you. Now, there's issues about the COVID-19 trust fund. Of course, he has a board of trustees. Article 175 of the 1992 Constitution clearly tells us that a fund like that, constitutes public funds. If you read, it tells you that such a how do you call it, a fund is public funds. And typically with public funds, we know how public funds are accounted for. The finance minister is a general supervisor when it comes to, or how do you supervises, how these public funds are expended. Now, it has also, of course, been set up by an Act of Parliament, 1013. Now, are you suggesting that, or let me rather ask you this, why did the finance minister, who was given questions, and one of which has to do with this particular fund, more than a year ago, what justification would the finance minister have for appearing before Parliament and not telling Parliament what the fund has so far accumulated and how the funds have been expended. Why on earth would the finance minister want to leave that out? In fact, he stated in the statement that is presented before Parliament that yes, everything I'm telling you excludes this. Why did the finance minister exclude this? Do you have any answer to that?
So, Moro, let me commensurate with Dr. Japan. I think the father died at 98, and so it's a very good age. We mourn with him and also celebrate the hard work that he's gone through. Now back to the finance minister. Now, Moro, you are aware that the COVID-19 Trust Fund, as you have stated, is a fund that has been set up to ensure that continually we raise revenue to deal with the COVID pandemic. And I mean, we are not out of the woods yet. I mean, clearly, every now and then we are reporting cases. In recent times, there's been a few new developments of the variation of the Omicron. I mean, many people have had cases, even though we don't have many of them in severe conditions. I think that is not far away from the finance minister to respond to that question. I mean, he's not running away from the question. But clearly, I mean, the COVID-19 Trust Fund, the work has not come to an end. I mean, the work is still ongoing. For which reason, whenever it's come to an appreciable time, they'll submit their reports
at the right time.
At the right time. I mean, they'll submit.
But why can't the finance minister tell us, for instance, so far this is what has come in and this is what has been spent? Must we wait till monies stop going to the trust fund before the finance minister comes to us?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I don't think that we need to wait. But you're aware that, I mean, in this country, on a governance level, we have various opportunities where the finance minister appears before Parliament.
Yes.
One of which is when he answered these 16 questions, which he clearly has done justice to it. I mean, over the period.
Right.
You're aware that the finance minister has responded to all these 16 questions.
He was getting angry.
I've gone through all of these. I think that you're picking on the personality of the finance minister rather than on his work. Which is what we must focus on.
Why? He's managing my taxes.
So you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
So clearly, I mean, there's no way...
you don't find anything wrong with that?
There's no way he would run away from answering a question of that nature. And clearly, if the good people of this country want to be able to find out, I mean, how well the work of the COVID-19 Trust Fund is ongoing, I mean, they can be able to find out. I can say on record that the next time I come on your show, which will be next week Saturday, I'll bring you an adequate update.
Mutala, it shouldn't be difficult for the finance committee, for instance, to invite, or for Parliament to invite the board of trustees of because you have raised it as a very, very important matter to you. For you for the what's the name of there's the former Chief Justice, something Akufu. She's the one who's heading the
Gloria Akufu.
Yeah, Sophia Akufu. It shouldn't be difficult for you to invite her to ask her how the fund is doing.
First and foremost, the board of trustees do not have their budget for Parliament to approve. The one who brings budget of government.
So you have no business with them?
No. The one who brings budgets of government for the purposes of approval of Parliament is the Minister for Finance. And I really don't think that even constitutionally you can invite her to come and stand on the floor. Perhaps a committee of Parliament can invite her. But if I can borrow my senior brother's proverb,
yes,
that you don't ask the caretaker of the happenings in a house when the landlord himself is around.
Okay. So I guess we can...
But let me just... He made mention of what they intend to do, the psychiatric hospital. That reminds me. Have you seen this psychiatric hospital? This government gathered the employees there and told them that they were selling it and that they were getting a redeveloper to come and redevelop the place. And I want to state this. We know that the psychiatric hospital is seated on a 13-acre plot of land. 13. And what smartly they intend to do is to get a redeveloper. They use about 3 acres of land and sell the other 10 acres of land to themselves. And that is why we will fight any attempt to do what they intend to do. Because
hold on. Inaccurate.
No, hold on. Really?
That's inaccurate.
You're saying you mean that Accra Psychiatric Hospital is seated on a 13-acre land?
Yes.
And the information you have picked is that government intends to give 3 acres to a redeveloper.
They gathered the employees there, the nurses, and told them that they were giving it to a developer to redevelop it. And we know how these things are done. So that is our suspicion. Our suspicion is that that's what they intend to do.
That suspicion will not come true. Because that's not what we intend to do.
Well, I'm happy that he's saying that it won't come true.
But speaking about state lands, Mutala, because as for the cathedral, you've said you've talked about it, and I get the point you're making. You also held a news conference with the minority leader. About the sale of state lands?
Yes, they have sold.
Tamale.
They have sold virtually every land to party apparatchiks. And what is so hurting?
Really?
Yes. What is so hurting about this particular instance is that they are selling institutional land. There is nothing wrong with a state reverting the ownership of land to traditional leaders, because the laws are very clear.
Yeah, that's what the law says.
Yeah, when you revert it to,
if you don't have any use for it,
and you
give
revert
it
it to the traditional people and they are selling it to people, we don't have any problem at all with that.
Right.
I get what I'm saying. But the point we are making here is that you have the West Hospital, the TTH, the Tamale Teaching Hospital, is a referral hospital now. The West Hospital, which is located in my constituency, the Central Hospital, they are all in my constituency. Now you have decided to sell the only land available for the West Hospital's expansion. And that land is not just a bare land. There are lands that have bungalows located in them.
Okay.
And you have started selling those lands to your party people. It's completely unacceptable. And if you know Tamale very well, you know the Picona Hotel.
Yes.
When you are going to the West Hospital is expanding because population in Tamale is expanding day by day. You go there, it is virtually choked. The only land available which the hospital can use to build some of their labs and expand their facilities are being sold to party apparatchiks. Okay. Another thing that is worrying, you know the Tamale prisons. The Tamale prisons is located at the police station. So when you come there, it is only the prisons where the inmates are and the officers of the prisoner, which is not even adequate. They don't have any residential accommodation there. The only place they have residential accommodation is about 800 meters away from the prisons. 19 prisons officers are there. Only for the leadership to be called and inform them that they sold those lands to private developers, and therefore they are going to rent a place for them to move in so that they can have, after 2 years, they know their fate. It's completely unacceptable. But let me state that I had several discussions with Honorable Abu Jinapo. The Gombes have a proverb, no kundong, which literally means that when the right of the wolf is uncontested, you give it to the wolf. If it wants to run into the bush with it, that is fair enough. Because when I met him, he was particularly angry, even yesterday. And he asked me as the member of parliament I should write to him, which I have done. And he promised me yesterday. And yesterday I was there with Honorable Alasan Sohini, who is also the ranking member on lands and forestry. And Honorable, one of our colleagues who was also there. And he promised that he was going to ensure that that thing did. In fact, Honorable Ayeni was also there. He was going to ensure that there is a stop. In fact, the state lands. Another thing, Sankpala Station. Okay. If you go to the old stadium, where people have been engaged in their businesses for decades, I'm told that they were also informed that there is a private person who has bought it. And I'm told there is a private person in Tamale who has some relationship with the lands, someone at the Lands Commission, and he does. That person will not do that from where he is coming from. It's completely unacceptable, particularly institutional lands, lands that have the potential of being expanded. If a state doesn't have any use for any land and reverse it to the traditional,
you don't have a problem with that.
We don't have any problem.
Good morning.
But let me just conclude on this. He talked about that they're engaging 1 million people.
Yes.
In fact, 30 seconds. You see, it is only this government that comes with all manner of employment, yet unemployment rate is increasing 19%. You took it from 6.8% to 19%.
We are finding a solution to it. The unemployment rate in this country cannot be solved by one single government. It's a journey, which is why we are raising that 1 million. I've projected and stated that if one person in the 1 million people starts a business and raise 20 people as employers or into the company, that's 20 million jobs.
The worrying aspects of what you guys are saying is that I agree, it is not a solution that one government can. However, when you have one government that took it around 6% and was able to create some jobs, and it was around 6.8%, and you describe that government as incompetent.
But Honorable, so are you trying to say
can
that...
I finish?
Honorable, you see,
I haven't finished.
I know you haven't finished, but you're at a stage where we need to be able to compare. I mean, clearly, you see, you are trying to say that our government has not done anything in tackling unemployment.
But why is it escalating?
Oh, but people are giving birth. People are completing.
So within 6.8%, I'm coming.
Seriously.
Within 6.8%.
So let me do this.
I'm coming. Within
Honorable, you see, there is population growth.
One minute. Just a minute.
Within 5 years.
Population growth.
Within 5 years, you took it from 6. No, within 5 years.
Hasn't the population grown in 5 years?
Within 5 years, you took it from 6.8 to 19%.
The population has grown.
Okay, guys, let me do this. Dela Edem has sent me a message. Dela Adam is a member of the NDC's communications team.
Yeah, Dela.
He says, good morning, Moro. It is a joke for anybody close to this government to tell Ghanaians that they would have managed COVID-19 better than any country in Africa. It simply means government officials and spokespersons have difficulty assessing themselves. How can we celebrate mediocrity? 1. Frontier Healthline Company made profits at the expense of the state in connivance with some government officials. 2. About 1,400 plus Ghanaians died. Are we proud about that? 3. COVID-19 tax was introduced in spite of the huge mobilization we got as a country. 4. Water and electricity given for free was paid for after COVID-19, though government budgeted for it. Akufo-Addo's government has failed in everything, and he will continue to fail as long as his brother has been imposed on us to manage our finances. That's coming from Dela Edem. This one here says that, good morning, I think I like this paragraph guy. The MPP should give him more opportunity to speak for government, because if such a person continues to speak for the government, he will make the government look good. Kudos to him. Kudos to him, kudos to him. That's coming from Mamie C. Dankwa.
Because he's engaged in propaganda.
Oh, I don't even know.
And then this one,
yes,
I have loads of messages. I'm just gonna read some of them, not all the messages. I don't know whether Abdallah, we're still gonna go to 10:30. We're ending the show at 10 o'clock. That's what I'm not sure about. So I would need some confirmation on that. Yes. Okay, all right, fantastic. So we would be going back to Teshi Nongwa at some point. Now, okay, so this one here from Sani. Sani says, good morning, Moro. Great show, great show, great show. This is my first time watching Inside. Okay, it's not Inside Politics, it's Inside Pages. I like your panelists. I think they are great. But please tell the Paragraph Dankwa guy that he's doing a good job, except that some of the questions you're asking him, I don't think he has okay, I don't know. I don't want to read that because, I think that's a bit condescending. I'm sorry, Sani, I can't read that, but I can't use that particular phrase. But I think the point is making that some of the questions, he thinks that you readily don't have the answers, and he understands. So this one here from Mustafa. Mustafa says, please, my regards to the Honorable Murtala Mohammed. Anytime he comes on your set, I watch your show till the end. One of the things he said, which for me makes me happy, is the point about the finance minister accounting to us how he has used our money, because the finance minister is not a law unto himself. Honorable Murtala Mohammed, please go ahead and do that for us. Okay, all right. Now, Alhaji Hamza from Pig Farm, he's also, Assalamu alaikum, Alhaji Hamza. It's a long time. I haven't heard from you in a while. Alhaji Hamza from Pig Farm, he sent us a message. He said, good morning, Moro. It is abundantly clear that this finance minister has no respect for our members of parliament, and for that matter, the speaker. The MP government should not be trusted when it comes to the management of our resources based on their track record. These were the people who told Ghanaians that they were coming to power to protect the public purse. Today, hardship has moved from bad to worse under this super incompetent government led by President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. It is only under this government that accountability and transparency becomes a problem for them. Truth be said, this country is seriously bleeding, and we need serious prayers to redeem it. Now, I want us to take a short break, but Abdallah, I think we should take a short break. When we come back, we'll touch briefly the banter between the Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa and the Attorney General, the Honorable Godfred Dame. It has to do with the role that Godfred Dame played at the very onset of the setting up of the Secretariat, and Honorable Ablakwa's contention that he couldn't have been a member of the Public Procurement Authority and also a member of the Secretariat. He thinks that, in his view, there's a case of conflict of interest. But the Attorney General has come out to explain his side of the matter. But beyond that, the Honorable Ablakwa has also said that the National Cathedral, is almost going to cost us $400 million US. Remember, it started from $100 US, it went to 150, it came to 250, came to 350, it's now $400 million US. It could be more before the cathedral is finally built. So there are still some issues. The cathedral matter doesn't appear to be end anytime now. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll touch on that briefly, and then at some point we'll go to Teshi Nongwa to join the chairman of the Jospon Group of Companies, Dr. Joseph Sian Ejapon, as he mourns his father since he passed on a week ago. All right, welcome back. This is Inside Pages on a Metro Television extended version, indeed, because it's 10 under normal circumstances would have ended the show by now. But today is a special edition because we're also mourning with the chairman of the Jospon Group of Companies, and at some point we go in there to bring you a live feed, and that's why we've had to extend the program a little bit, perhaps to till say 10:30. My colleague Esther is there. At some point she'll be joining us to tell us what's happening at Teshinungwa residence. There's a family residence of Dr. Joseph Siao A. Japon. So when she's ready, we'll be linking up with her. So yes, as you can see, the shots on your screens, the dignitaries that are still passing through to commiserate with the big man himself, Dr. Joseph Siao A. Japon. And it's going to continue like that for a while, but even before we brought you these, a few things have happened in the past. For instance, the vice president passed through to also say, to commiserate with him. And also, I'm told the regional minister, Henry Quarty, has been there. The member of parliament for Ningo Prampram has also been there. Yes, that's Reverend Opokunyina. He's also there in your shot. Yes, fully represented. I've also seen I also, earlier saw the Honorable Elvis Efree Ankara. Professor Kwame Nahoy was also there from the NDC, and so on and so forth. So these things is going to continue for a while. So we would be joined by Esther at some point to bring us a live commentary on what is happening, because she's there, so she sees the action much more closely than those of us who are here. So let's do this. Whilst at it, so there's been some, you can call it a banter between the Member of Parliament for North Tong and the Attorney General. And it has to do with the role that Attorney General played when he was Deputy Attorney General sometime in 2019. So let's first of all look at the reaction. Or we should rather bring you what Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa said before we bring you a reaction from the Attorney General. So I don't know, but whatever my production team puts up on the screen, I'll read it to you. So that's it. It says, for immediate release, Communications Director, Jubilee House, response to... Okay, so this one, actually, okay, sorry. This one has to do with the president's trip. Sorry about that. So we'll bring you... There's a little mishap, but we'll bring you... we'll bring you the what the Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa said, and that of the Attorney General, Godfred Dame. But Bryce Simmons is also in the mix. Now, Bryce Simmons was the one who actually raised the issues about the $400 million which the National Cathedral would eventually be swallowing by the time we're done. And Ablakwa has actually also confirmed it as well. The Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has also confirmed it. But let me tell you what Bryce Simmons said. Now, he says, a few months ago, the government of Ghana quietly renegotiated contract sums on the National Cathedral to a whopping $400 million after significant confusion and rancor over earlier design work between builders G. Etcher and architects Ajayi Associates. It goes on. It says, and the tweet was accompanied by an extract in which the project contractor is addressing some of their recent projects. And it says, what are the most significant cases of transactions that your legal team has recently been involved in? Our legal team has just been able to finalize a 400. So it was Bright who asked, and he got a response from them. He says, look, our legal team has just been able to finalize a $400 million contract for the project of the cathedral in Ghana, because we're told, remember that before this one came out, we were told it was going to cost us $350, as the finance minister has said. And it says, we've secured a 200 million euro deal for the new headquarters of the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg. The Rizana, the Etcher legal team, has also been involved in a final arbitration hearing against the state of the Gulf, and it goes on and on and on. But then Brian Simmons added in the following, he said, the public watches in bewilderment as a project initially cost us 100 million, now tops 400 million for construction alone. And there's also issues about how much David Ajayi is being paid and so on and so forth. 12.5, which some say is before, it's way above, RIBA. RIBA is actually the agency that oversees how much architects are supposed to charge. and so on and so forth. It's actually based in UK. So that is what we have for now. But I'll also at some point to bringing you what Ablakwa said about Gofredami, which actually, triggered the response from Gofredami himself. So we're working on that. We'll bring that on the screens. But whilst at it, let me pick the thoughts of Murtala Mohammed, the Honorable Member of Parliament, on what he makes of this banter between the two of them. Because as we speak, the Honorable Attorney General is actually threatening to sue the Member of Parliament because he says the Member of Parliament has defamed him. He says the Member of Parliament has defamed him because how do you accuse me of conflict of interest when at the time when he said, at the time I was there as the secretary to the board, it was a private company in his view. So it's about the interpretation of his role. The Honorable Member of Parliament thinks that, look, it's a public company. You are there in your capacity as both the secretary to the board and also in your capacity as a member of the Public Procurement Authority. So there are some issues there. Have you been following this banter between the Honorable Member of Parliament and the Attorney General?
Yalmuro, I have.
First
and foremost, I know
Yes.
Fred Adami for a very long time. Myself and he, we met in Legon. But I see him to be a complete changed person. And I've had the cause to have told him. I've seen some uncontrollable level of arrogance that he demonstrates every day. And people's expectations were that as perhaps if not the youngest Minister for Justice and Attorney General, at least one of the youngest persons to have been appointed to that position.
Right, so you can see, I'm sorry about that, whilst at it. The Chief of Staff, the Honorable Fremont Parry, has arrived at the 1 week observation of the celebration of the passing of the chairman of the Jospin Group of Companies. She's there to also commiserate with him as well. So yes, that's her in your shots, the Chief of Staff, Fremont Parry. Yeah. And also, well, that's a Carlos von Brazi. He's a Deputy Chief of Staff as well. Yeah, that's the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of who? Who's the Greater Accra Regional Chairman, you mean? Of the MPP. Of the MPP, okay. All right, what's his name again? Okay, doesn't readily come to mind.
You guys wanted to frustrate this guy.
All right, so that's Esther. Yeah, so Esther is going to tell us what's happening there. So let's watch this briefly. We'll be back.
In his son's life. I mean, somebody who has been able to set up companies, over 60 plus companies, 32 subsidiaries. I mean, this ceremony has been clad with a lot of dignitaries. The Vice President has been here. Honorable MP for Ningo Pampram, Sam George, has been here. We've had the Chief of Staff here as well. We have Honorable Kwesi Ahoy here. We have a lot of dignitaries. We've had the Guard Council here as well. I mean, it's evident because this is a man whose work is seen all over, who has branches in waste, who has branches in oil and gas, who has branches in manufacturing. All his companies has largely impacted the nation Ghana. So if his father has passed away, then it's evident that all of Ghana, all dignitaries, all employees of the Jospin Group, everybody who even hears about it is here to commiserate with him. So we'll try to speak to some of the dignitaries. It's a solemn moment, but as some of them are just now coming, we'll wait when some of them are already settled. We'll try and speak to them. What is their goodwill for this man who has largely impacted the country? What is their goodwill for him? And what do they say to him? How are they going to support this ceremony as well? They are probably enough. But we know that the main funeral will be much even gone, as there are a lot of media houses here as well. There are a lot of individuals officials, people who are not in government, officers who are also here to support him. Try and speak to some of the leaders of the Church of Pentecost, where Jospon Group is a staunch and devoted member. He has been of large support to the to the Church of Pentecost. We try and speak to the former chairman of the Church of Pentecost, just arrived, and engage him as well, because his impact has been very evident in the Church of Pentecost. So he supports the church, he supports development of the nation, he supports individuals as well. So indeed, it's a grand ceremony. It's what we're talking about.
That's all. Wasi wabaye when monyan force your Japan wokitan and some and negan.
Sorry about that. Right. So those were shots from the Teshinungwa family residence of the Jospon Group of Companies. That's Dr. Joseph Siawe Japan, where he's observing the 1 week of the passing of his father. And we're all commiserating with him. And that's why we brought you some shots from the grounds, and high personalities were there. Top personalities were there. I actually saw Joe Gate, it's actually the member of parliament for Isikadu Ketan, yes, and also an aspiring presidential candidate, yes, of the New Patriotic Party. I saw him there as well. Many people, the chief of staff itself has been there, the vice president has been there, Henry Quarte, it's a tall list. So let's come to this thing just briefly. So I was just mentioning something, and I said, the Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa has alleged that the secretary to the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral is the Attorney General Godfrey Dame. He said the Attorney General assumed this role while he was the Deputy Attorney General. Now, he says the National Cathedral was registered as a private entity. He indicated that the information he saw from the Registrar General's Department reveals that the AG's name, not his position, was indicated as the secretary. Now, he says, now, this is the explosive bit. This is the first time I'm putting this out. We will be exploring this in further detail in the coming hours. Would you believe that this private entity, the secretary to the board, the secretary to the company on page 3 of this incorporation document is Godfrey Dame, the Attorney General? Remember, the incorporation was done on the 18th of January 2019. At the time, Godfrey Dame was Deputy Attorney General, so you cannot say this is a position for Deputy Attorney General. In any case, this is a registered private entity and not a state-owned entity at state-owned entity, and it is his name, not the position, not the office. 2019, when he was deputy. So that is the issue he has with him. So we're going to use just in the next 10 minutes to just briefly touch on this matter because we don't have enough time to do that. So, yes, you were on the floor telling me what you make of the banter between him.
Well, I'm saying that I Godfrey and I were in Legon. I mean, interestingly.
Right.
I remember when he was in Commonwealth Hall, I used to be there very often. I think that haven't been elevated to the position of a minister for justice and attorney general, even though I disagree with everything about this government, the mess, the corruption, the incompetence. I was particularly happy for him as a young man who was given that rare opportunity. I think he would be by far, at least in this Fourth Republic, the youngest attorney general. But he's becoming so arrogant, to tell you the truth.
Really?
His blistering comments, you remember recently he made some comments and it took some senior citizens to caution him, of the comments he makes. And I think that he needs to take it easy. I mean, being a minister, a deputy minister and a minister, sometimes the comment, if he thinks that Honorable Okudzeto has defamed, he should go to court and stop this threats. As a matter of fact, the argument is not as to whether it was a private entity or a public entity. The argument and the crux of Okudzeto's, statement was the fact that at the time when he was seated on a board, the procurement board, to determine whether a contract be awarded to that particular entity or for the purposes of building the cathedral, he was a secretary to the board. I mean, it simply doesn't make sense, whether a private or a public. That is not the issue. Conflict of interest is not even the commission of crime. The remotest possibility of a crime being committed. So that is just the issue.
But he said in 2018 when he was with the Public Procurement Authority.
Yeah.
And was also serving on the board. Was also the secretary to the secretariat. The secretariat hadn't been registered then.
It doesn't still matter. And once you become a minister,
it hadn't been registered as
once
a
you
company.
become a minister or a deputy, you forfeit your private engagement. You can only do the ministers out, completely out. You can't engage in any private business any longer. But even in Parliament...
But that's a separate issue.
I'm saying that even in Parliament, it's not separate. But you see, more so the board that he was seated on.
There are two issues. You see, there are two issues. One is whether the propriety or otherwise of him being there.
Yeah.
And what it means for conflict of interest. So these are two aspects. Because you are raising issues about the fact that as Deputy Attorney General, he had no business being there. So whether the place had been registered or not, that's one issue.
I'm saying that the issue they were considering.
Yes.
Clearly, there could be conflict of interest in that matter. And like I said, it is not even the commission of crime, but the remotest possibility of a crime being committed.
Okay.
And did he make it known to the people of this country that just as I am the Deputy Minister for Justice and Attorney General,
yes,
I still have this engagement I am in. The extent to which that engagement has an interest to do business with government. And in doing business with government, I sit on a board that would determine whether they have the right or they could get the opportunity to do the business with government or not. I mean, these are issues that are very murky. And for me, the best is that he should have just been quiet.
Okay.
Honorable Okujeto has said he should go to court. Go to court and stop this bluffing.
Okay.
And I just want him to know that we will hold this government accountable. And in any case, is it not appropriate that he had absolved himself of that particular job at the moment he became the Minister for Justice and Attorney General? But you see, all these things come at the heels of this cathedral building. You just mentioned Ajayi. This gentleman came to Ghana in 2006, 2007 to set up his office. And he was setting up the office with anticipation of Mr. Nanado becoming the president after the 2008 elections. When the MPP lost the elections and then the candidate could not become the president, he closed the office and left. He closed up that office and left, only for him to come back after the president or Mr. Nanado be elected as the president of the Republic of Ghana. We are being told now by Gabi Ocherdako, who I describe as the unofficial prime minister of this country, that yes, we should celebrate the man's achievement and expertise. I have no doubt whatsoever. In fact, I don't know him that much, but I won't be in a position to question his expertise and the work he did globally. But people who have done such works and want to be celebrated are not afraid of competition.
Okay.
Why did they give that thing on soul sourcing? Why would you build the house of God, a house to glorify God, on the pact of lies, deceit, thievery?
Right.
Why would you want to do that? The constitution of this country is very clear. You cannot expend a dime as a state without it being approved by Parliament. And in fact, even after the budget is approved, appropriation must be approved.
Okay.
There is no denying the fact that Parliament never approved the expenditures that government engaged in. I listened to my good friend John Kuma. He said that, it was captured in the 2018 budget.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, 2018 budget, there was nowhere stated in the budget that government was going to spend this amount of money for the purposes of the cathedral. What government said was that they were going to help provide the seed capital for the cathedral. And in any case, 2018 budget has got nothing to do with 2022 budget. And his response, he said, and he did this on Joy. He said that, yes, because we stated it in 2018, if we didn't have the money then, and now we now have the money. I said, wait a minute. Okay. Which kind of economics is this?
All right.
The lifespan of every budget finishes at the end of the year.
Honorable, unfortunately, we have to end because
So
of
let
time.
me just conclude. So clearly, it was wrong. Again, you have awarded money to an entity that is an international entity, knowing very well that our laws frown upon that. So you cannot build a house to glorify God on the pact of lies, deceit, thievery. Okay. I am telling you, Jesus Christ himself will be very angry at this government for what they want to do in his name. Because you are doing this in his name through thievery. That is not what the Jesus Christ expects.
One of the things you don't know is that, perhaps you don't know, is that, our group, Washidankwa is also a reverend. Recently,
will Jesus be happy about
just
this?
recently, he was on the pulpit.
So let me ask, will Jesus be happy? No, will Jesus be happy to build the house of God? No, I want to. I beg you. Will Jesus be happy to build a house to glorify him on the pacts of lies, deceit, disregard to constitution, disregard to procurement laws, disregard to laws that you have all agreed to establish, will Jesus Christ be happy or he'll be angry?
Reverend
Jesus Christ would be very happy to see that his kingdom is spread throughout the world.
Through lies.
Jesus Christ
Through
will
deceit.
be very happy that every church is planted in every community where people are, even those
Will
that
you be
do not
happy
believe
you
in
do
him.
this? You do this
And so
through
I believe very
TV.
well. I believe very well that in the mind
You're
of
not
the
answering the
leadership
question.
of the Holy Spirit and in the mind of Jesus
You're not
Christ,
answering the
he would
question,
be very,
Reverend.
very
No,
happy
I think you
see
should allow
that
him
Ghana,
to also.
Ghana
But
as
he's
a
not answering
country-
my question.
Yeah, well,
you would see that Ghana as a country
Yes.
has built a monument in honor of him. But
Yeah.
really, you
No,
know,
not Ghana as a country. President
Honorable,
Nana
honorable,
Akufo-Addo.
honorable, honorable,
you
please,
see, in
honorable,
the,
please.
in the
Let's
legal
allow him.
framework of the cathedral, it is
Yes.
stated on point 2 that it is noted that on 18th of July 2019,
Yes.
the National Cathedral of Ghana was incorporated under the Companies Act 1963, Act 179, as a company limited by guarantee. The National Cathedral of Ghana is therefore a company limited by guarantee with a sole corporate member being the Ghana Museums and Monuments Board as a governing agency. So there is no way that anybody in the right scheme of things can be able to say that the National Cathedral is a private entity of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. In effect,
what are you saying?
if you build a cathedral in the manner in which we want to and look at the economic benefits of that, and I've stated on
Which
record,
benefit?
look, there are various, as I speak today, I watch online, I see various people that have traveled to Rome, people that have traveled to Notre Dame, people that have traveled
Really?
to St. Paul's Cathedral. I myself,
You are comparing them with this.
Of course.
There is a history behind those churches.
And there is a history behind
Which history?
the history behind the reason why the single majority of Ghanaian people who believe very well that they need to be able to give reverence to the supremacy of God.
Which
Ghana
majority
is
of
by
Ghanaians?
Ghana is by extension a religious state.
I said, which majority
Both
of Ghanaians?
Muslims and Christians.
I said, which majority of Ghanaians says that you should do this?
Muslims and
Moro,
Christians.
there's a
Collectively,
history
even
behind
the chief
There are
imam
people-
himself
there are-
contributed. Even the
Do
chief
you
imam
listen to
himself-
yourself?
The chief imam himself.
There's a history behind
contributed.
Notre Dame, those churches. This
The
one was the
chief
history.
imam-
The only
chief
history
imam-
behind this will
the
be
chief
that it was
imam
built on the
himself
fact of lies,
donated. The chief
deceit,
imam himself
thievery.
donated to the cathedral. And so
right.
you cannot
So-
say
So
that.
what's wrong with
You
that?
cannot say- But really, let's put it in context.
haven't
that
donated
the
yet.
honorable Okudato Ablakwa is a very respected gentleman. He's my very good friend and senior.
right.
But you see, at various stages of the legislative arm of government and the work for which you must do, it's important that you don't isolate issues
What issues?
which is not needed.
Did you have parliamentary approval?
No, but then you see, the
Did
honorable minister for Justice and Attorney General clearly has stated that at the time when this company was incorporated,
He should stop the bluffing
it
and go
was
to
not-
court.
It was not a private entity. For
He
which
should
reason
even be
that
ashamed
there was
of
no
himself
conflict
that
of interest.
he's
In
responding
which
to
board? Which board would have a single member making a decision on behalf of the board? And more, as we close, let me bring greetings to the overlord of the Achimwe-Boakwa, whom today is celebrating the home festival.
Are you also a member of the Nanado's family?
I do not deny.
All right, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much
You
for
are-
watching.
you are an epitome of the family.
It's been great having you as my audience today, watching another edition of Inside Pages. My name is Al Dumoro. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.